Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Texas Roadhouse Live. I'm your host, Kinky Friedman.
From the human race, wipe those tears from your lovely face. Baby, wait to the man in the old red caboose before all hell breaks loose. And before you go, I wish you'd come. Before you leave, wish you loved me some. I'll give you all of the dreams you can use before all hell breaks loose. Now I know what the gypsy meant when he said that you'll never be president. He said, adopt a Korean boy, kill you a moose before all hell breaks loose. Gonna both fun at my cowboy shoes. You say they look just like big news. Now it's time for the chosen ones to choose before all hell breaks loose. Turn out the lights, honey, turn on the news. God save the queen and the kangaroos. And what kind of rubbers did Joseph use before all hell broke loose? Time to resign from the human race. Wipe those tears from your lovely face. Baby, wait to the man in the old red caboose before all hell breaks loose.
You've got to think for yourself. That's the first thing. And you've got to question always. Don't just take anybody's word for anything. It's a tough road to get to wisdom all on your own like that. But if you keep an open heart and an open mind, you'll eventually get there. Most people shut down when they get a little hurt. You got to be able to take those hurts and keep going. And I think the Kinkster has never stopped. I think he's always kept going through whatever disasters, whatever tragedies, whatever misunderstandings. And believe me, I don't think there have been many men who have been more misunderstood than the Kinkster.
The Hummingbird Man. No, I mean, Alan kills on that. There's no doubt about it. But in each of their ways, when you go through all the kinkyisms, which is another favorite part, each of those 1, 2, 3, and final thoughts, I think that really hits home how the swings of Kinky's personality are out there and how they reflect. But certainly the Hummingbird Man, it pulls it all together at the end of the play and shows the very poignancy of his writing and his heart. So.
I live alone now in the lodge where my late parents once lived, and I'm getting used to it. Being a member of the orphan club's not so bad. Sooner or later, fate will pluck us all up by our pretty necks. If you have a family of your own, maybe you won't feel it quite as much. Or maybe you will. I'm married to the wind, and my children are my animals and the books I've written. And I love them all. I don't play favorites, but I miss my mom and dad. My mother died in May 1985, just a few weeks before camp started. And my father died in August 2002, just a few weeks after camp was over. I can still see my mother sitting at her desk, going over a cluttered clipboard with all the camp rosters and menus. I could see her at the Navajo campfire, at the big hoedown, at the friendship circle under the stars. What I remember most of all are the hummingbirds. It might have been 1953 when my mother hung out the first hummingbird feeder on the front porch of the lodge. The grown-up outside world liked Ike that year and loved Lucy. And Hank Williams died, as did Ethel and Julius Rosenberg. I believe now that I might have been vaguely aware of these events occurring even back then. But it was those tiny, wondrous rainbows of flying color that really caught my eye. The hummingbirds always nested in the same juniper tree next to the lodge. Decades later, after my mother's death, the tree began to die as well. Yet, even when there were only a few green branches left, the hummingbirds continued to make that tree their summer home. Some of the staff thought the tree was an eyesore, and more than once offered to cut it down, but Tom wouldn't hear of it. I think he regarded the hummingbirds as little pieces of my mother's soul. My father and I more or less took over the Hummingbird Project together in 1985. As time went by, we grew into the role. My father, of course, did many other things besides feeding the hummingbirds. I, unfortunately, did not. That was how I gradually became known as the Hummingbird Man of Echo Hill. On bright, cold mornings, I stand in front of the old lodge, squinting into the brittle hill country sunlight, hoping, I suppose, for an impossible glimpse of a hummingbird, or of my mother, or my father. They've all migrated far away, and the conventional wisdom is that only the hummingbirds are ever coming back. Yet still I see my mother hanging that first feeder. The juniper tree blew down in a storm 2 winters ago, but the hummers have found other places to nest. One of them is in my heart. And I can still see my dad sitting under the dead juniper tree. Only the tree doesn't seem dead, neither does he. It takes a big man to sit there with a little hummingbird book, taking the time to talk to a group of small boys. He's telling them that there are more than 300 species of hummingbird. They are the smallest of all birds, he says, and also the fastest. They are also, he tells the kids, the only birds who can fly backwards. They'd like to try that themselves, they say. So would I.